Hey guys, in today's video we're going to look at all of the updates that have happened in the year 2024, which is the first full year of Watcher of Realms release. As you know, I kind of didn't play a bunch of this, so I've been reading all of the patch notes I can find. A big shout out to some of the community managers and marketing team at Moonton. They sent me a few links to help me out, so thank you. And yeah, I've been poring over the Facebook, I've been reading all the update notes, I've been looking through the game and catching up and familiarizing myself. And I wanted to share with you, if you're looking maybe returning to the game, or if you recently have returned or will be, it might be useful to know what's new in Watcher of Realms. This is going to be quite a cursory glance because a lot has changed, but I will leave as much information as I can on screen and show as much as I can that hopefully it gives you enough of an idea as to where to get started or where to look into more. So before we begin, there's two things. First, let's just show you all of the notes of what's actually changed. Hopefully I make some nice graphic to give you an idea. But I'm going to cover it in blocks. So there's going to be general changes. There's going to be the campaign, the gear dungeons, which is a new kind of raid. There'll be the Immortal Codex, which was first added December 2023. There will be a lot of updates to gear, artifacts, new heroes, and changes to summoning. And then we'll go into some of the PvP stuff with changes to arena. And then we'll go into some of the guild stuff. So there'll be the guild boss changes, guild boss 2. And there'll be guild war changes as well. So that's the layout for the video, and I'll be putting the month that those changes were implemented, because it's nice to have an idea as to, roughly how long ago a change or a new piece of content has been in the game. The second thing I wanted to mention is there is a Christmas event on called Frostfall Lucky Draw. It is to do with Smile.One and the W gold currency, so if you're not a spender then don't worry about this at all, but if you are, there is an event on which is from the 20th of December to the 31st of December, during which time there's a 10% discount. And topping up via Smile.One, their online portal that handles the W Gold, will give you a number of draw tickets, which enters you into some kind of fancy raffle, the Frostfall Lucky Draw. I'll share a bunch of information on the screen and I'll post it in a comment. The developers very kindly gave me a link, so I have a custom link. And if you do use it and you're new to Smile.One, you haven't topped up with W Gold before, then I'll get a 5% kickback. So it's very nice and very generous, but as always, if you're not spending, don't worry about it at all. So anyway, with that, let's crack on. And if you want to skip to anything, please feel free to. I'll put timestamps all along the bottom, so feel free to go to whatever interests you. And if you want any clarifications or any information on anything, please just leave a comment asking. There are plenty of really nice, really knowledgeable people in this community that I am eternally grateful for, and I'm sure plenty of people will help you out if I don't have the answer myself, but I will try my best as well. All right, so let's crack on. So to kick things off, we're going to look at the general updates. These are things that I couldn't classify entirely. And my favorite, probably one of my favorite changes as well, is just the ability to do background auto. So there's an event on Vigor 2, we can go to it, go to auto fight, you can select however many you want, and you can see there's a checkbox here now, which is background auto or background fight. So I can hit free, and then you can see it just queues it here, and now it's fighting. If I exit out of this, I can do what I want, I can mess around on my heroes, I think you can't change gear of people currently in an auto fight, but besides that, you can do almost anything you want. And you can see it's running in the background here, 3x speed with all my bonuses. It's got the recommendations, which we'll get into later. And you can minimize it. You can sell and manipulate gear that appears here. And at the same time, I can also go and do other things. So I could actually just run some autos on Gear Raid 3, for example. So it's running in the background, the autos in Gear Raid 2. And now I'm actually doing an auto for Gear Raid 3 right now as well. The only stipulation is that you cannot do the same thing twice. So I can't run Gear Raid 3 stage 21 on auto and then run it again on auto in the background. So you can't simultaneously run the exact same stage. So I exited out of the Gear Raid 3 run just because I want to show you this part, and I can go and check my auto rewards. I can just mark it and sell it here because it's something I don't really want. And yeah, you can manage your autos, you can do all that stuff without consuming more battery than it needs to. You can run it in the background and do other bits. So that's the first thing. I think it's really good. This is probably one of my favorite update changes we've had. The second thing that I've put on the general list is the Odyssey questline. You can see it in the bottom left here. If you remember, there was a storyline quest. Maybe you still have it, but if you played for a while, you've almost certainly finished it by now. And the storyline quest rewarded you with Volca upon completion. Well, now they've added another kind of storyline quest. This one is called the Odyssey questline. And you can see there's a whole bunch of quests here I've already completed. And you do unlock a skin for Dolores. And the skins give you very, very minor stats. It's mainly just a flex and to have some underboob. And you can also unlock this legendary hero for free, I believe it said. He seems pretty cool. I've seen him used in quite a few places, but we won't get into that in this video. But yes, you can unlock a skin for Dolores and you can unlock this fella right here. and there are a bunch of incremental rewards along the way, which are pretty good. So this is a nice extra just thing to focus on, something to help get you back into the game and to give you some more additional rewards and some nice free stuff. The third thing on the list is that you can do background auto and real time, which I showed you already. So in March, we had the background autos come in, and then in June, they added the ability to do real time at the same as background auto. So you can have two things running at the same time. Really neat. The fourth thing in the list is in July, they added the Void Rift epilogue. So you're quite familiar with the Void Rift by now, I would assume. This thing with, the different game modes, the different difficulties. Well, now they added the epilogue. If you're wondering how to access the Void Rift epilogue, well, you need to first clear the Void Rift on hard mode. And you can see there are a bunch of encounters and different enemies to fight along the way. It is quite hard. The rewards are quite good. I've not cleared it all the way myself, so I haven't got everything unlocked, but I will be working on that at some point. You can see there's a whole bunch of content here. So this is nice. It's an extra bit of content they've added to kind of give you some more work after Void Rift. And something else you may have noticed is this right here. In August, they moved a bunch of these different areas into the War Room. So you can kind of manage and access a bunch of stuff in a central place. You have Tide, you have the Guild Boss, you have Guild Boss 2, which is known as Titanic Ruins, which we'll get to later. You have the Void Rift epilogue we just went over, and of course Void Rift, and then Demonic Crusade, which we'll also get to later as well. So it's just a hub to kind of control some of these more, I don't know what you'd call them, like tertiary events or raids or kind of time staggered things outside of your just PvP campaign and raids, because it doesn't really fit into those groups. That's it for what I've put as the general updates. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's happened in the last year, loads of balancing, patching changes to all these different heroes. I won't go over that kind of stuff because it's a bit too granular and it will take forever. Maybe we can look at that in another video. So for this, I'm mainly focusing on the bigger features or features that I found particularly interesting. But if there's something I missed, please just leave a comment and let me know, because I'd love to see it, and I'm sure other people would too. So on to the next main topic, it's campaign. They've added 2 new chapters to the campaign. It's chapter 9 part 2. You may note there are only 12 missions on this chapter, whereas most chapters tend to have between like 15 and 18 missions. This one only has about 12, so it's a bit shorter. You do also get another XP raid unlocked, so you can get a lot more XP potions. And they also added a Spectral Rift to the part 1. So yeah, in June they added this, which is the part 2 of chapter 9. And then in November, so very recently actually, only last month, they added chapter 10 to the game. I haven't had time to look into this yet, but it appears to be the dwarf terrain and the dwarven enemies that we saw revealed in the interview I did way back in December last year with Moonton. So great to see that in the game finally. It'll be fun to get into this. So moving on to the next big criteria, the next big area to discuss is gear dungeons. So this is a fairly new thing that was first introduced in April, and the split, so there's Gear Dungeon 1 and Gear Dungeon 2, was first introduced in June. Something unique to how the gear dungeons work, and kind of pivotal because of how good some of the rewards can be, is that you only have a limited amount of keys to actually access them with. So by default, you get about 100 of these dungeon keys. I believe these keys cycle on a monthly basis, so you're returned to 100 keys at the end or the start of the month, I believe. And if you don't have any more, then you can access it using master keys. So once you've used your dungeon keys, you can go through using the master key. The master key is basically a special resource that will allow you to enter additionally, and they're only used after you've consumed all of your default dungeon keys. You can get the master keys in a number of ways. You can obtain them by farming the normal gear raids 1 through 3. You can sometimes buy them from events and shops, but mainly you'll kind of very slowly get a trickle of them. Another thing to note is that Gear Dungeon 1 and Gear Dungeon 2 have a separate pool of dungeon keys. I've yet to spend mine or get very far into it, but I'll look into doing some guides on it if I find out anything interesting when I do get around to playing them, because they are quite fun and they are pretty distinct from each other as well. Very quickly before we move on, in the shop there is additional tabs now. There's one for the dungeon shop and there's an Immortal Codex one we'll get to later. But in the dungeon shop you can see you get dungeon crystals from farming Gear Raid 1, and you can use that to buy stuff from this marketplace. I haven't looked into it myself. I've been recommended to buy these advanced crystals, which is part of something we'll get into later as well. But anyway, there's a whole ton of features that came into the game, mainly around gear, related to the gear dungeon, which we'll get into in the gear section, but there's some pretty cool stuff there. So moving on, there is the Immortal Codex, which was first added, I believe, December 2023. It is here in the raid section. You can see there are 3 bosses right now. This also cycles. There's a whole bunch of information on it you can read in the game. There are 6 bosses you can see here right now. However, in February of 2024, they added the Hellfire Emperor here, who is obviously Solkadens. And then on March of this year, 2024, they added the Arbiter of Frost, which is Boreas. So these 2 bosses were only added fairly recently. If you're not familiar with the Immortal Codex, it's basically like a challenge mode. You can attempt to beat the boss by achieving as many points as possible. The way you get points varies per boss, so it requires you to build specific teams to get the most points possible in each encounter. So for example, this one, you need to have a lot of ground fighters and good ways of dealing with mass hordes of enemies. It's kind of like a infinite horde wave mode. For the Solkaden's Hellfire Emperor boss, you need to sustain a whole bunch of defenders against the kind of infinite waves of these enemies that come out, which is why you can see a whole bunch of the North faction defenders at the top of the list. But they are pretty fun content, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck into them a lot more. Based on the rank you score will give you points, so you can see point rewards here, and these will give you Immortal Sovereigns, which you can use in the shop, which is right here, the redemption shop here, and you can buy whatever you want to gamble with, either the gear recast or the ancient shards. And then also at the end there is a ranking, so there will kind of tally up all the results, and people who are placed at the top will get rewards additionally, and you will get rewards additionally based on your position as well. So with that, let's move on to probably one of the biggest segments, which is gear. In April of this year, they added, you see right here, this list of the new gear dungeons. With the gear dungeons, they added new tier 3 sets. These are very strong sets. A lot of these are pretty good sets. As far as I know though, Soulbound Arcana is still considered super good, but obviously it's still worth collecting the new sets as things are going to change and get reshifted. But from this list right here, you can see there are currently 9 sets available from the gear dungeons. And the first 6 sets over here, so from Tempered Will, Hell's Lament, Unshaken Will, Morale, Light's Grace, and Wicked Vengeance, these were all added in April. And the last 3 sets you can see over here, Astral Guardian, Cataclysm, and Wings of Grace, these 3 were added in November, so pretty new sets indeed, and they seem to be pretty strong from what I've seen at least. We'll have a look at some of the other features which I think are more interesting personally. So they've made a lot of stuff around gear just a lot better, honestly. There's some really cool functionality in here. So we'll go through it based on when it was implemented first, but we'll get to it later. They added gear swapping, which I think is a huge thing that a lot of us really want. So you can click this quick change button, click who you want to swap with and hit OK, and bang, it just swaps the gear around. So this is something we've been after for a very long time. I'm really glad to see that they finally got it into the game. You can click here as well to quickly change the hero that you want to swap from. So I can click on my constants and then I can swap here easily. And then your constants is selected. It's just a nice thing to add. I'm really glad that they put the time into implementing it. And then something else, they have made this foundry section here, this button right here at the bottom of the screen. This contains a bunch of stuff now. There is a forging system, identify, ascend, recast, and refine. So first off, we'll start with identify and forge, as these were introduced in April along with the gear dungeon. So forging is basically these materials here, the sanguine fabric and the smoldering scale. You need 20 of each of these to do a forge, and you'll have these basically all roll out random pieces of gear based on these obtainable sets. How you get these? Well, you can get it by farming the gear dungeons 1 and 2, and you can get it from the shop if you want to spend some of the resources that you get from farming those dungeons, the crystals. So if you just do a forge, you can see the little animation here. And you can see we've got one of the new sets, although a flat main stat because of course. So that's the gear forging system. I've actually done this not that much, maybe 50 or 60 forges, and I've gotten a lot of really good gear out of it already, so it seems pretty good to me at least. And then the identify system is kind of a little unusual. Basically, you can get unidentified gear, and you can identify it in this section. When you do, it rolls out a variant stat. So you can see this piece here is a variant mythic gear of the Annihilating Might set, and at the bottom it has aggression, so it has plus 200 flat attack. They have a bunch of different effects that it can be. This one has fortitude, so it has a bunch of flat health on it. It's a cool system. It's just more ways of getting some more compound stats on gear, I guess. If you're wondering how you can actually get unidentified gear, well, so far I've seen 2 ways. One of them is a very small random drop chance from the gear dungeons, and the other one is by buying it using the resource dungeon crystals to buy one of these items here. So this unidentified piece here, which I bought and got rubbish for, so probably don't do that. So in June, they added the quick change and gear planning system. So if we go back to the character and quick change, then there's also this plan. This allows you to try on gear. As you can see, I can just click on my Ajax's piece. I can go to a different piece up here, click on that piece, try it on, and you can see all of the different equipments. And it's pretty nice, actually. It allows you to kind of save a set, I guess. You can save the plan, and then you can confirm to equip, and then you can swap back and forth between them. So it's a nice little way of managing gear. Seems to be pretty useful. So back to the foundry then. There is now the gear refinement system as well, which you can go into here. And you can see these advanced refining crystals, which you can buy with the dungeon crystals. You can consume one to re-roll a stat, a single stat, and it will re-roll it. And I believe if it rolls less, it automatically rejects it. If it rolls higher, it automatically accepts it, I believe. I haven't used any yet because I don't really have any gear that I really want to do it on. You can see that it also requires a different resource based on the rarity of the equipment. So you need an advanced one if you're using a mythic piece. If you're using a non-mythic piece, you just need these refining crystals. You can get these as a reward from Guild War and Guild Boss to the Titanic Ruins. Something that I somehow nearly missed, which would be foolish as this is actually a really big, awesome feature, is gear recommendation rules, which was added in August. So you can see I have a background auto right here, and up the top right, you can see there are recommendation settings. This is a pretty huge configuration, as you can see. You can manage your plans here, and you can import and export plans. There's a lot to this feature, and you can basically create your own custom plans to control what gear is marked as recommended or not, which will allow you to quickly sell items which are not recommended. So you can make your own custom filters for gear. That's basically what this is. Super useful feature. Really, really awesome that they implemented it. And even better that they made a way for you to share it with other people. What you can do is you can define a group. Say, I'm going to define this as, I don't know, offensive gear that I want to keep. So I think one of the newer good sets is a Cataclysm. And I can say, okay, so this is going to be this set. And then I'll name it DPS gear. And then now I have a rule for DPS gear. I can say I only want the primary to be attack, bonus, crit damage, and maybe attack speed, just because maybe it's good sometimes. You can select all if you want. And then I can say that the secondary bonus has to include 3 of these 4. So I'm saying for these 3 sets, it can be any of these 3 main stats, but it always has to have 3 of these substats. So it always has to have crit rate, right? Because one of them is going to be cancelled out by one of the main stats. So what I'm effectively saying is always give me items with crit rate and 2 of these other substats, bearing in mind that one of them is already eaten away. So if it's an attack bonus drops, it has to have crit rate. You can't have attack bonus, so then it has to have 2 other selected bonuses, and that would be crit damage and attack speed. So I'm saying only show me gear. For these sets, it's only recommended if it's an attack bonus piece, it has to have crit rate, crit damage, and attack speed. If it's a crit damage piece, it has to have crit rate, attack bonus, and attack speed. If it's attack speed, it has to have attack bonus, crit rate, and crit damage substats. So that's what that rule is saying right here. And this is only applying to these 3 sets. I think this is a fantastic system. It allows you to really granularly customize your rules. You can add more rules here by hitting add rule, selecting your things and naming it. So this is kind of like a prime DPS set maybe. But you get the idea. I think it's a really neat system. I think this is a great implementation of how to go about it. I'm not sure what the general community feedback is, but from what I've seen, this is a really nice way of doing it. You can customize it for your 3 set pieces and for your 2 set pieces. You can manage your plan. You can restore to default. So you can export the plan and give it a name. So you can share it with people. That's a rubbish plan. Don't use that. Or you can import from other people's plans. I'm sure there are plenty of really good community plans out there, especially from some of the content creators. I'll look into doing something like this if it's needed, but I'm sure there are already fantastic plans that exist at the moment. So yeah, great system, really, really great system. This was requested for quite a while. This helps solve a lot of the problems with just thinning down gear and selling stuff. So another great feature. We already mentioned the new gear sets which came out in November. There is one other thing that came out in November, so very, very recently dropped, which is exclusive gear. You can get these by forging it, as we just saw in the Foundry. This forge system can give you exclusive gear, and it's not these sets. These are not exclusives. You saw with the unidentified gear that you can get an extra stat effect here, aggression. Well, there are some pieces as well which are equipped, which are exclusive. So you can see on my hat set, I have 2 things equipped right now, and in the top left corner, there is another icon. This icon means it's exclusive. You can see the variant one doesn't have it. It's just kind of more glowy, I guess. But the exclusive ones have this extra like badge in the top left of the gear piece. So this one should actually be equipped on Morrigan, but I'm trying to work with something here. So you can see for Morrigan, this is an special exclusive, reduces the Curse Pact effect activation time by 20 seconds. And after it takes effect, you get an additional 15% damage bonus. If you know Morrigan, I think she takes 45 seconds to get a 25% damage amp permanently. So she gets stronger if you've left her in for more than X amount of time. This makes it activate sooner and do more damage. So it's actually a pretty good effect. And you can see at the top, there's a banner here that says Morrigan exclusive. One of the things that's really cool about these exclusives is it doesn't require a full set. You don't need to have 3 pieces that say exclusive for Morrigan. If you just put this one piece on Morrigan, it will take effect. The other one I have equipped is a different type of exclusive. That one we saw was exclusive for Morrigan. This one is an exclusive for the Nightmare faction as a whole. So it says exclusive for the Nightmare Council. Basic attack has a 5% chance to deal an extra damage 1 time. kind of plays into their Lord bonuses where they get a chance to trigger multi-attacks. So that's really good, and as you can see, it's highlighted in green to show that it's active. So definitely very potent. These are very newly added into the game, so you won't be seeing too many super good pieces flying around just yet, but probably quite soon, as a lot of the farming for these is gated behind those keys. Remember, you can't just infinitely farm the gear dungeons as you want. But yeah, I think this is a really nice feature. I quite like it. It just adds more flair and variety, and some of these are really, really strong. They are slowly adding more as well. I'm not sure if they'll cover every hero, but they certainly seem to be getting through quite a lot. Lots of factions have them as well, so it'll be fun to see how far they go with that system. Another thing that was added for gear is the quick enhancement of rewards. So you can see I got a piece here from a background auto fight of Gear Raid 2, and I can go look at the piece and say, hey, that looks pretty good, and then I can just hit plus 12 and enhance it, all within my all within my reward screen. So I can just quickly go through gear, enhance it, and sell it, or whatever I want to do with it. So gear has had a lot of changes. I haven't gone over every single thing, as you may have noticed. There's a whole bunch of stuff. There's the recast system, which was added at the end of last year, so which allows you to use these recasting hammers and re-roll all of the substats. You can't control which ones. Refining is to refine a single substat. Recast is to refine or re-roll all of the substats. But in general, they've done a lot of work with gear. There's a lot more filter work going on, so you can kind of set the level range as well as the rarity. They've certainly put in a lot of time and effort into that. But the other thing that's been changed, the next big category, is artifacts. Honestly, there's not been huge changes to artifacts themselves in functionality. However, they have added a few things. So in January, they added a bunch of new artifacts, both common artifacts as well as more exclusive artifacts. So you can see in this list, if you scroll to the bottom, these are some new artifacts that were added to the general artifact pool. They also added more exclusive artifacts, and they added more ways of getting exclusive artifacts. Previously, you had to go through the Void Rift to get them, but now you can actually farm Titan Meteorites, Wisdom Meteorites, and you can farm Gleaming Meteorites. And these will give you a chance to get hold of exclusive artifacts, which are, of course, per character. So these are bound to a specific hero. And you can see the rates for the exclusives here. Both of these have 4% chance, and the final one, the Gleaming ones, is a 20% chance. So they dropped in more artifacts in January, in June, and in August again. And you can see that the Titan Forge has a specific list of exclusives, starting with the Helm of Yalnor, down to Lionheart Pommel here. But if you go to the Wisdom Forge, this set seems to be slightly different of artifacts. There is a split between which ones you want to farm for. And you notice this one is better. These are the Gleaming ones. These are the ones you get from Void Rift. So you can still get a better chance at getting exclusive artifacts by farming Void Rift. But if you really want to get exclusive artifacts, because a lot of them are very good, some of them are not good at all, but a lot of them are pretty good, or some of them, I guess it's better to say some of them are just super important. Well, there are ways of farming these ones, the Titan and Wisdom Meteorites, which is the new content they added in October, the later stages of Artifact Material Raid. I haven't had a chance to look into it yet, but you can see stage 19 gives you Titan, so does stage 21. Stage 20 gives you the Wisdom Meteorites, and so does stage 22. So this content is obviously a lot harder. You can see there's a spike in the recommended BP from the previous 591k of stage 18 to 770,000 in 21 and 22. But it's cool they've given us another way to get exclusive artifacts, as they are kind of a necessary and a fun system, and it's a shame they were locked between once a week RNG. So now you have a way to try to get hold of a bit more, although still quite rare at 4%, right? So moving on from artifacts, they have added a whole bunch of new heroes. And they've also changed some stuff to do with obtaining heroes and some kind of just general stuff around that. So let's have a look at some of the new stuff that's coming in the gallery. I have not gone over all the heroes. There's a lot that's changed. So the next update came in April, which is related to hero summoning. You may be aware that before this point, at least, hero summoning events, the banners at the weekends, would either be a 2x up for the rate of getting a legendary hero, or a 10x up that if you do get a legendary, it rolls into one of the banner heroes. Well, they've changed that now from 10x to 15x, which has been requested for a while, especially last year, because they keep increasing the hero pool. So if it stays at only 10x, but the hero pool gets better or gets bigger, it becomes way harder. The 10x is no longer pulling its own weight. So 15x was the upgrade to make it a bit better, a bit increased odds of actually getting the banner heroes, which is a good thing. But obviously a whole load more heroes that keep being added to the game, so I'm not sure if it still maths out, but it's a good change. It's good that they listen to the community, so I'm glad to see that happened. Some of the other stuff that happened in June, they introduced a rotating skin shop. So if you go to the shop, you can go to skins, and you can see there's now, it kind of phases in and out, it rotates, they bring it back old skins and introduce new skins. So you can see there's a new mount here which you can use in the Void Rift. They've added a skin for the Epic Lord Iron. They've added a skin for Vienna. This was introduced in the Valentine's Day event, and very recently for a new hero released for Christmas, they've added a skin for Lyra, which is the mistletoe mink skin. So if you're interested in skins, you can buy them in the skin shop, rotating, I guess, on a monthly basis. I'm not too sure. A whole load of heroes were introduced over the last year. I'll name them quickly. I'm not going to go over them in detail because it would take a while. In January, they added Anai and Admiral Claw. February, they added Lust, who is a very strong nightmare fighter. In March, they added Artemis, Trusk, and a fusion event for Crodor. In April, they added Valderon, which is a legendary lord for the Chaos faction, the second one. Also Edith, who is very good in Gear Dungeon 2 for the pushback. Avizo, Esme, and George, which are some epic heroes, which is nice to have in the pool. In May, they added Magma, Seraphina, Kalina, Iovar, which is the second Piercer legendary lord, also super good, getting a lot of use, and Rourke. In June, there was Dahlia, Magda, Inet, Micah, who is a fusion legendary. So we have another fusion legendary, which is obviously great to have. They added Jira, Anora, Ymret, which is the second nameless hero, another dragon, which is pretty awesome. Lucius, Helga, and Ares. In July, they brought in Eliza, Glacius, and Ingrid. Ingrid is basically game busting from what I've heard. One of the most sought after heroes in the game. The second legendary lord for the Watcher faction, Duo faction, with the Arbiters. Then in October, they brought in Zaris, Kigiri, Twyla, Beatrix, Celine, and Lady Alexandra. Lady Alexandra you can only get, as far as I'm aware, via the Overlord Apex Arena shop, which we'll get to later. Kigiri is very good in Guild Boss 2 for the strip ability. Twyla is a great damage dealer for the Nightmare faction, which I think you see a lot of use in Guild Boss as well. In November, they brought in Lord Phineas. And then now, this December, they brought in Callista, Lila Tallulah, and they will be bringing in Sun Wukong at the very end of this year, who's also expected to be super, super strong. So there is a bit of power creep going on. A lot of these new names are considered top tier, especially when it comes to Ingrid, and it is expected to be the same for Sun Wukong as well. I mean, as a Chinese company, I think they would be hard-pressed not to make Sun Wukong incredibly overpowered, so it'll be cool to see how good he is, and I've heard he's not too hard to get, so hopefully we all get him. The last thing to discuss regarding heroes is quite an important one. This is to do with pity. So in November, so again, a fairly recent change. If you go to the pity timer rules, there's 4 changes being made. So default pity has now been changed from starting to incur, because this game has soft pity and hard pity, remember. At soft pity, it kind of increases your rate up by 5% for each summon until you eventually get the hard cap. Previously, the soft pity started at 200. Now it starts at 180, as you can see here, and it hard caps at 200. So at 200 summons, you're guaranteed to get a legendary hero. They've also changed how the pity works for the divine shards as well. So these shiny ones right here. You only amass 2% pity per summon, which I think took you to around 50 summons to guarantee a legendary. Now it's only 20 summons. There's 5% increase per summon you make with these legendary shards, with the divine shards. So after 20 summons, you're guaranteed to get a legendary hero. So this is much nicer than before. And I can't show you because they're not available right now, but they've also changed the pity on ancient shards so that now from 200 it's gone down to 185, so a hard cap on 200 summons for a legendary lord. And for the limited heroes, so you know there's events where certain heroes get introduced to the game and you need to make at least 250 summons to guarantee to get that hero, and now it's down to 200. So in general, they've made it a lot easier to get legendary heroes on average. They've brought down the pities, which is nice, and they've made the limited heroes less brutal to try to save up for. So those are very nice changes. A bunch of new heroes added to the game. I don't know about most of them, honestly. I haven't read up on the majority of the new heroes yet, but at least they look pretty cool. They seem to be getting a lot of use. I think there's quite a bit of power creep going on, especially with Ingrid being introduced, and it sounds like Sun Wukong as well will be a lot of power creep. But it's kind of expected with this kind of game, right? But anyway, the pity changes are really nice. I'm glad they increased the hero rate up from 10x to 15x. They've added another legendary fusion hero in Micah, so I'm pretty happy with some of those changes. I think it's generally good things coming in there. All right, so those are all the changes I could find on heroes that seem to be the biggest ones. Let's move on to the next category, which is the arena. So in arena, they have added another rank. You can see I've not really touched arena a lot, but there's now the Apex Overlord rank, which is reserved for the top 300 players. You do get a fancy avatar obtained from it, you get better rewards, you get a bunch of these Apex coins, and you can see the Apex coins are obtainable in Platinum Free and Overlord as well. So this rank was introduced in January. Another thing that happened in January is, you may, if you're familiar with the game from last year and not so much this year, there were 4 types of arena. Well, not anymore. You can see there's actually anti-air, AoE DPS, and single target DPS. Last year we also had continuous damage arena, but they've just completely scrapped it and stuck with the original free, which I think is a good decision. I think continuous damage arena just didn't really feel as unique as it should have done. So personally, I like that decision, but I haven't really done a lot of arena, as you can see, so I'm sure I'm missing out on some important changes there. In March of this year, they also added the ability to do a friendly face-off. So if you go to everyone's favorite Discord admin, you can go to friendly face-off and you can select either Guild War or Arena, and you can play test against them and try some things out, if they've enabled it, of course. In April of this year, they introduced two things. The first one is that you can split your offense and defense teams. So if I go to attack someone, I can run my offense or whatever I want to do as normal. Then you can actually go to your defense teams here and you can start and set things up. And you can actually go to play and test out these teams, place your heroes one by one, and it's kind of a training stage as well that way. So you can really set up and see how things would work based on how you want to. So you can see Arena's training stage. And you can see right here that the battle ended, and I can now choose to update the offense, the defense, and I can also, and it's hidden underneath this button annoyingly right now, the status, but there's actually a button you can't see just there, where you can toggle to record both gear and artifact info. So that's really nice. You can choose to set if you want to record your current gear and artifacts at the time, to save them with your offense and defense, upload it here, and then in future you don't have to worry about ungearing your arena characters. So I think those are really, really nice changes right there. It makes arena a lot less fiddly, right? Another thing, in October they introduced the two things. One is this win streak. You get bonus points if you keep winning your matches. Do note, if you actually hit the refresh button in arena here, refresh your opponents, it will wipe out your win spree. So long as you can keep clearing all these guys without refreshing, you'll get more points per win. And finally for Arena, we kind of looked at it earlier, but it's the Apex shop. This was only introduced in October as well. And you can see it uses the Apex coins, which I don't have any because I haven't done Arena much. And this is where you can buy the Lady Alexandra legendary hero. You can buy a bunch of other stuff, fancy borders to show your EP, and a soul stone for Lady Alexandra. You can get a very nice bow for Silas, and you can upgrade the tree that you use in your starting town, which is, so if you click on this button here on the left, you can turn rock into tree. There you go. Or you can make it a glowy portal thing. So just cosmetic stuff to upgrade the home. I'm a little bit disappointed that we're still homeless bums living on a beach. I would like it if, you know, at this point when you've got all these super duper legendary heroes and loads of gear, that we had some kind of fancy manor or castle. But hey ho, it's something, right? They're beginning to see. I'm hoping we'll have a bit more going on than just changing out little elements, but maybe one for the future. Fingers crossed. So next up is Guild Boss. I have 3 changes listed for this one that I've seen. The first is that when you go into Guild Boss, you can either choose to start or you can go to playtest mode. If you go to playtest mode, it doesn't cost you a Crusade rune, grants you no rewards, but you can update your auto fight. So this allows you to tinker around and test teams out without worrying about burning your Crusade runes and wasting your runs for the day. I think this is really nice. I'm glad they finally added it. It's a great way of allowing us to test without worrying about wasting our resource, as the rewards are pretty good. That was added in February. In June, they added 2 other things. The first one is that they removed some of the common loot pool items. There was a bunch of rubbish stuff like promotion materials, for example, some of the insignias. They've been taken out of the Nightmare 1 to 4 rewards. This was kind of necessary. It's kind of disappointing when you're doing, you know, you spend a bit of time getting your team working and then you just get complete nonsense for rewards. So it's nice that they listened to that and took that out of the loot pool. Obviously, we don't know the weightings exactly, so it might not still matter that much. But anyway, the bigger news of June was that they added the Titanic Ruins weekly, which is this content right here. This is also known as Guild Boss 2. So there are 2 different phases to it, Apocalypse 1 and Apocalypse 2. There's a whole bunch of mechanics to it. There's 3 phases to the boss, and there's a lot more to go into there. I'm not going to get into it in this video, but it's great that we finally got some more new content, new Guild Boss content in the game. So the final section to discuss in this video is the Guild War. I have not done this since I've returned to playing the game. I've been catching up on everything else, so forgive me for just kind of reading over the notes and trying to find the relevant bits. In January, they gave more free starter demon soldiers, so these are your demon soldiers. They gave more for completing the basic tutorials. They also made it so you get contribution-based bonus rewards from January as well. So now if you're doing most of the heavy lifting for your guild and you're getting all of the wins and your defense is doing great, then you'll be getting more points added. So it gives a bit more incentive to do some heavy lifting to help your guild out. As we saw earlier in the friends list, you can go to a friend and do friendly face-offs, and this includes in Guild War as well. So you can attack your friend's Guild War setup and you can test against their defenses. So that's really nice. There's a lot of theory craft that goes into PvP in these games, and tools like this kind of helps people collaborate and play together and figure out some stuff. I think this really adds a lot of fun to the game. rather than just blindly wasting your attacks trying to see if things work or not. So I'm really glad they added this change. So a few more things. They added more demons because more. They added a Demonic Crusade challenge. So if you go to the War Room, it's right here. I think we saw right at the start of the video, there are these different challenge modes. There's the main stage, which is kind of like a tutorial phase to get you familiar with attacking with demons. It gives you some test difficult runs so you can get familiar with how the systems work. And then they added a challenge stages where you have to use preset teams, and there are some conditions where you have to try to get through to clear it in the right time. These are really fun, actually. I really like doing these. I would recommend not looking at a guide if you have the time and the patience, because it is just good fun to try and figure it out. They're basically like puzzles. But yeah, these were added in June. I think they're really nice. In August, they added the ability to update your garrisoned heroes gear, so you don't have to worry about the timing of the guild war starting and then you haven't updated the gear. And finally for the video is the Gladiator's Gauntlet, which is not available yet, but it is basically a single elimination format with no ties, highest HP wins, guild war system. Every day is a new round and there's a limited number of attacks, so you kind of have to get it right the first time. You can't be as leisurely as you are in a normal guild war. So that about covers it for the main features and updates that came to Watcher of Realms in 2024. Again, I've not gone over the smaller details such as hero balancing notes or little micro changes to rewards, because there's going to be a lot of those, and I think it would be a very long video. I'm sure this is already a very long video, so we'll cap it off there. Please leave any comments if I've missed anything, misunderstood anything, or just outright got anything wrong. I would like to be corrected, and I would like other people watching the video to be corrected if that is the case. And thank you in advance if you do that. I'm going to look into diving into some of these things in more detail and maybe making some guides or some more explanation videos. I have a few planned coming up. But in the meantime, thank you guys very much for watching. It's been a pleasure. It's nice to be back. And I wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. See you in another one, guys. Take care and bye-bye.